Hello and welcome to Apple with the Doc. In this podcast, we'll be going over Typhus, an outbreak that's currently occurring in Los Angeles County. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit and hopefully enjoy this podcast. Now let's jump into it. And so, for the first news, it has to deal with a disease that hasn't really struck fear in America for a while. It's something that we have had in the past, and that's typhus. This diarrheal condition, this is where you get Typhoid Mary from. She was a very prominent figure in medicine for all the wrong reasons. She didn't discover anything. What she was a carrier for typhus. And they called her Typhoid Mary because she was someone who actually colonized and held on to the bacteria that's associated with typhus. And so, what she would do is she would make food. She worked like in a restaurant, I believe, and she would make food. And every single time there's an outbreak, it was because of her. And doctors asked her to stay and be treated and stop cooking for 10 months. But what happened there was that would interfere with her work, and then she couldn't support herself or her family. And so she continued to work, and then you still continue to have the outbreak. And so this is one of those famous cases in medicine that many people learn about. But this has to deal with LA. According to the NBC News, the LA typhus outbreak has surpassed 100. I was hearing about this epidemic earlier this month, where it was about, I think it was like 10 people or something like that. But to have this many people is actually phenomenal. And just on like one day out of the week, they had 72 cases within the LA County. And this is not including like the more touristy parts. I believe they are Long Beach and Pasadena, but they who actually have their own municipalities that actually take care of this. And so, if you were to look at the index of how many cases they would have per year, for them it would be 20 cases per year. And so, these people, I mean, this exceeds it by a large amount. This is where you actually start considering an epidemic. When you consider something an epidemic, what it actually is you have an expected number of people to get sick every year. This is one of the reasons why Ebola isn't always an outbreak. If Ebola was an outbreak every single year, you would, like, if they were classified as an epidemic, you wouldn't really have an epidemic then. You would just have, it's Ebola season. I believe Ebola is in a seasonal pattern, just like influenza. Every year you have people with the flu. Because of vaccines and because of better medicine, we don't have epidemics of influenza anymore. However, that's not to say that we won't have epidemics in the future. If you think back to the avian flu or the swine flu has always existed. It's not like something that was like a brand new virus that actually occurred. But it just so happened that I think it was like 2009-ish, swine flu actually exceeded the expected number of people with swine flu that you would have. So let's say you've had 20 cases of swine flu in China. But all of a sudden there's like 100 cases. There's an epidemic then. You have to see what it is. And then whether or not you can prevent it from becoming like a pandemic, or crossing like some sort of geographical bounds or a geographical country. And so, one of the things they're attributing this to is the increased homeless population. some of my friends on the right would always call not Canada, California, California, and it's due to like the increased social welfare. Um, welfare in itself could be good and bad at the same time. Long-term welfare, I believe when I was reading this in the past, it adds on to the lack of willingness for a person to actually work and provide for themselves. It demotivates a person, and then you start having people who sit there on fixed income. But then again, that's just Social Security as well, and a lot of people don't plan for the future. I don't know why not anymore. And so, within this year, they've had 98 cases in just LA alone, close to around 100. And so, what they're figuring is that these cases, they're located near the downtown area where you start having trash piles. You have rats that carry this around, and you have a large amount of homeless population in the area. So a little bit about typhus. Many of you may know it as typhoid fever. What it is, it's caused by a certain bacteria that's transmitted by bites from either fleas, chiggers, that's Chiggers, not the one that starts with the N, lice or ticks. And when they bite you, you have the transmission of this bacteria. And so you wonder why you have this problem when you start having a lot of homeless people. Now, not to say all homeless people are filthy, but you tend to be a little bit more dirty when you're homeless. And that's probably due to the fact that you don't have a home or anywhere to have a shower. And so I guess this is where the social programs come in, where they provide like housing, or they'll have places for homeless people to shower, and so it'll help continue to support these people and reduce epidemics such as this one, where you have typhus going around 100 cases in a year, and it's not something that's really. I mean, this is like a disease of the past that we're trying to still eradicate, and I mean, third world countries still have this problem, but in America we shouldn't either. Then again, this is California, where they have a hepatitis A epidemic. If you don't know what hepatitis A is, it's this virus that's along the lines of hepatitis B and C. It doesn't really cause chronic liver problems or anything, but hepatitis A is something that's passed from a fecal to oral route. So if you crap in the streets and you eat something, you don't wash your hands, that's how you get hepatitis A. So, that's also happening in California. Now you wonder why a lot of people are leaving California. And so, if you just simply look up typhus, it states in plain English, it develops in countries or regions of poverty, poor sanitation, and close human contact. So, of course, it's going to happen in a huge city like LA, where everyone's constantly in contact with another person. And what happens is when you have like this sort of when you get bitten by these carriers, it enters your bloodstream. It can still have like systemic effect. That's where the fever comes in, and then you can also have like feverish chills. You have symptoms that's similar to the flu. And the other thing is that there's like different types of typhus, along with which is associated with how you would classify it as like epidemic and endemic, that sort of thing. But this also can lead to nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. That's where you start having like these, either if you're like homeless or you just can't get to the bathroom in time, either crap your pants or crap in the streets. And so you have a diarrhea that's associated with it, and that's how it's transferred. I believe that's also how Typhus Mary had it. She was a carrier, she was immune to it, but if you don't wash your hands after using the bathroom, you can get seriously sick. But yeah, so next time you're in LA, or if you live in LA, just make sure you wash your hands pretty well. especially when you have a large homeless population that's still increasing, and there's a lot of trash around the area. And so the other thing is it can also lead to death due to like dehydration, just sepsis in general. But yeah, that's LA for you. And the next bit of news is this survey that's recently came out that states that nearly 40% of Americans incorrectly believe in alternative medicine can cure cancer, according to the study. And what they did was just they surveyed people and asked them whether or not they believed alternative therapies can actually help. Now, in medicine, we have something called complementary alternative medication, or CAM. And so, CAM, there's actually a scoring system that's used that goes through like A, B, C, D, and E, I believe. The things with A are something that's either proven to be helpful or not proven, or sorry, they're proven to be helpful, and like the lowest rung of the ladder, which is is D. There's not a whole lot of evidence in supporting this, so that's like A would be something like how do I put it? Milk helping curing vitamin D, or well, that's treated milk actually. Our milk in the U.S. is actually supplemented with vitamin D, and this happened because a few public health policies that came in and said if our milk was added on vitamin D, and vitamin D is important for helping the absorption of calcium. If vitamin D was added to milk, we can have better health and that sort of stuff. And that's why you have to start having vitamin D that's fortified with milk. And so that's like saying drinking milk will help with vitamin D deficiency. Yeah, that's true. Or something like St. John's wort, I believe, is used for depression, I believe. Taking supplements of that, there's some strong evidence there. But if you are depressed, I suggest you see a psychiatrist, or and you can either take the medications, or you can go through cognitive behavioral therapy, or you can do CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, on yourself and ask yourself, meditate on it. Why are you feeling depressed? Is there something wrong? How can you fix it? And that sort of stuff. But anyways, this is just like an opinion survey that was done by American Society of Clinical Oncology with a Harris poll, where they asked a bunch of people, just, do you believe in alternative medicine? And I mean, I have also seen this in my practice. A few pretty bad cases. One was a lady with stage 4 cancer. Unfortunately, we couldn't figure out what kind of cancer because she did not want us to biopsy. But her and her husband wanted to treat this in a more natural, they use their homeopathic sort of thing. I've had a patient come in and who had 3 artificial valves. They're mainly due to like genetic abnormalities in having strep throat that wasn't treated properly, and so you get rheumatic fever, and then your valves aren't as good as they would be, and so when you're on a metallic valve, what happens? You have to take blood thinners for life, essentially, until you have that valve replaced and put in a bovine or a cadaver valve. So you had to be on these blood thinners, and this guy was trying to tell me that he wanted to use homeopathic therapies to actually treat this, because he didn't want to take warfarin, and warfarin is like considered to be a category of poisons if you take it too much. And so he was like, I'm poisoning my body. I don't want to take that. I'd rather prefer to do homeopathic. Now, the problem with homeopathic is, yeah, it may work, but the problem is you don't have the actual, I won't say science, but you don't have like the reference points. You don't have the the consistency in order to actually continue treating yourself. When you introduce a doctor who gives you warfarin, the doctor can actually control the dosage level of that and do tests on a regular basis, and you know that you're actually getting a certain amount of dose. Like if you were just to eat a leaf, every leaf contains a different amount of that certain protein or certain part of the chemical. And so, I've seen that happen in the past where people want to have homeopathic treatments, but I mean, it's just not something that's actually feasible. And so, they're just going into how like people just wanted to use that homeopathic treatments to actually treat cancer because they don't want to use like quote unquote poisons, and they want to do diets in order to help them. If you see in an earlier podcast, I go into how organic. There's a belief that organic foods can actually help prevent cancers such as Hodgkin's lymphoma. I hope you check out that podcast as well. But this one also believes that this also goes into like how people believe it's safer because it's homeopathic and not something that's controlled by medicine. All in all, I mean, you can try it if you want, but I do suggest that you go to your doctor. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable with certain medications, discuss that with your doctor, and hopefully your doctor is a good doctor and willing to change the medications. I've had patients who didn't like certain medications because of the way they feel on them, so be like, okay, we'll just change it for you. But in all, you should still regularly see your doctor. And a lot of these homeopathic treatments, some may work, some may not. If you think that shoving coconut oil and chocolate up your bumhole it will help, do it, but still see a doctor. I mean, it's one of the more important things. And homeopathic has its places, and we've had medicine from like homeopathic things. Like foxglove was actually something that's quite useful. I believe the Native Americans actually were using it at some point. So things like that. But the thing is, what happens, we use these natural substances and we boil it down to its essence or the one chemical that we need from that, so you don't get like a bunch of other things. You may have a cure within a flower, but then one cure within a flower, but you can have 90 poisons within the same flower. And so that's what science basically does. We do take things from botany, we take things from all sorts of different sciences and see if they actually work, and that's how you get your new medications. This has been Apple with the Doc. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. You can reach out to me on Twitter at djacknoff. That's my Twitter handle. You can tell me whether or not I suck, or if you have any topics that you want to go into, you can tell me it there. Thank you for listening.